Today on this episode of Tom Talks, we're going to talk about this fantastic Ferrari Daytona we currently have in stock. Now, before we talk about the car itself, let's talk a little about the model. Ferrari Daytona was first unveiled to the public at the 1968 Paris Motor Show. It was the successor to the 275 GTB4, a car that was very successful for Ferrari, a very evocative model. The Daytona was powered by a 4.4 litre V12 engine that produced over 350 brake horsepower and earned it the title of being the fastest production car of that time. It retained some features from the 275 GTB4, such as the independent rear suspension, the 5-speed transaxle, the same wheelbase, although the front and rear tracks were widened on a Daytona, which gave it a more dominant appearance. They built 1,284 examples, and only 158 of those cars were UK right-hand drive versions, such as the car I have behind me. Now let's find out more about this particular car. Now, to say this is no normal example would be a huge understatement. Chassis 16579 was ordered by and delivered new to Colonel Ronnie Hoare himself. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with the name Colonel Ronnie Hoare, he was the concessionaire for Ferrari in the UK in this period. He ordered the car in his favourite colour combination of blue Dino Metallizzato over a blue leather interior and blue carpets. The most impressive thing about the car today, though, is that it's only done 10,800 warranted miles from new. It's never been restored, it's never been taken apart, it's as it was delivered new in April 1973. Now, which is what I pay a lot of attention to, is when you look through the history file of this car, and you see what the car comes with. Its original handbooks, its original warranty card. We've spoken about this in previous episodes, but the importance I place on this is pretty high. Dated and stamped by Maranello concessionaires in 1973, even the service coupon stamped. And you can see the condition of it is reflection to the car like new. It's got its original duster cover, its original owner's manuals, even its original spare keys. And then when you look at the history file, and what does the car still retain today? Well, it's got lots of MOTs to substantiate the mileage, previous registration documents, period correspondence, including, which is very cool, a letter from Colonel Ronnie Hoare to the second owner. As when you read through the history file, what's apparent is that he met the second owner in Annabelle nightclub, and Mr. Garrett expressed his interest in the Colonel's fabulous blue Ferrari Daytona, and if he would ever sell it one day, would he please get in touch? And the Colonel, being a second-hand car salesman, suddenly decided to part with his pride and joy, a car that he'd covered 3,400 miles in. Now, just take time to consider that for a second. When the Colonel sold it, it had done 3,400 miles. That's a third of the mileage, the total mileage that the car has covered today. It's pretty impressive. The car still retains its original factory invoice, which confirms the exact specification it was delivered in. Correspondence from the factory to Colonel Ronnie Hoare dated back to November 1972. Correspondence from the Colonel to the second owner. The second owner kept the car until unfortunately he passed away in the early 80s. The car then found its way into the hands of noted Ferrari collector Peter Teichmann. Peter displayed the car at the 1987 Ferrari Owners Club Concours at Mottram Hall, where the car was awarded Best in Class. There's some great correspondence in the file where Peter is conversing with the Colonel, proudly talking about the fact that he owns his old car and that it's never been restored, it's never been taken apart. It's exactly as it was when it was delivered to him in 1973. Peter would then keep the car until the early 90s, when the most recent owner, the gentleman we purchased the car from, purchased it from Peter in around about 1993. Since then, the car has been stored in a dehumidified environment. It's barely been driven. It's been driven for MOTs. It's complete today with the ultimate Ferrari Daytona registration number, which is 175 mph, which coincidentally is the top speed of a Daytona. It really is fantastic. Now, unless you've owned a Daytona or you know the model intimately well, then you probably won't appreciate how great this car actually is. It baffles me that it hasn't flown out the door yet, because this is an unrepeatable car. 10,000 miles from new, never taken apart, never restored. And then when you look at the interior, a car is only original once. You can go buy a shed of an example, and if you spend enough money on it, you can make it look beautiful. You can take it to the Concours events, you can win best of class, best of whatever, but it's only original once. And when you look at the interior of this car and you see all the original leather, all the original carpets, the original mouse hair dash, original factory air conditioning, original factory radio, and it isn't just like one of those cars that's been found out of a barn that is original but is tired, is in desperate need of repair. Like, this car wouldn't have looked any better in 1975 than it does today. It's absolutely beautiful. Like, the leather is still firm. I can't get across how phenomenal this car is. You look inside the engine bay and everything's just beautiful. It's not too shiny like you see on some cars that have been restored in the last 15 or 20 years. You know, it's got all its original factory plaque and its factory stickers, all of the correct leads and heat insulation. You know, it's absolutely beautiful, nicely patinated, and patinated purely really from age, because it's not from mileage. You know, it brings me on. Looking inside the engine bay is one other thing I'd mention on a Daytona, that a lot of people who've been buying Daytonas recently have been doing the power steering upgrade, and that's something that I really frowned upon, because, you know, I like cars that are totally period correct. And, you know, a really good client of mine, I sold him a Daytona Spider, and he said to me, I want you to fit the power steering upgrade. And I said, that's crazy, like, that's silly. And this is a noted collector. And anyway, we fitted it. I frowned upon it until I drove it, and then I thought it was absolutely fantastic, because the only criticism I would give a Daytona is that they can be particularly heavy at low speeds. When you get into 3,500, 4,000 RPMs, they really come into their own. But at low speeds, they become a little bit heavy and, you know, encumbersome. And, you know, that's something which I would say to any prospective new owner, maybe consider putting power steering on it. And that's the only thing I would possibly change about this car. And if you put power steering on and you decide you don't like it or you want to remove it, it's a few bolts and you've wasted £5,000. So let's recap. It's one of 158 UK right-hand drive supplied cars. It was ordered by and delivered new to a who's who in the Ferrari world. It's Thankfully, not finished in retail red, but finished in a fantastic original color combination throughout. It's totally original throughout, completely original interior. It's done 10,800 warranted miles from new. It's complete with its original handbooks, including its original warranty card, its original leather pouch, a fantastic history file that documents the whole car's life, and it's £575,000. Somebody should really snap this car up.